Hey guys! So today we're going to talk about using a still life to work on your composition and about being able to find where things are on the page. So one of the things you'll notice about the picture I'm working from is that it has a grid, so the paper's actually been divided into 4 sections. You're probably going, oh, how am I going to find the middle of this paper? But it's easier than you think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold to where the corners touch each other. Then I'm going to hold that tight. I'm going to take my pencil, I'm going to push down so it goes down to the middle, and I'm just going to mark. And you don't have to mark hard because you're just giving yourself an idea. Pull down, mark. And then I'm going to do the same thing the long way. I will come and match up my corners. We'll hold it, lengthen, and lengthen. Okay. Now I am going to erase those just a little bit so I've got a lighter line. And then I'm going to make an approximate grid on mine so that you can see. Keep in mind that you do not have to draw this grid. This is just to help you out. And mine's not going to be exact because I'm not using a ruler, but it'll give me a good idea of when something should be in the top left quadrant or the bottom right quadrant. Okay, quadrant. Okay, so I'm going to start with this banana. And what I'm going to do first is get my basic shapes. I'm not going to really focus in on it being too perfect simply because I don't want to get ahead of myself and then get it all tight and perfect and then realize, oh, it's in the wrong place. So I can see where the end of the paper would be, right underneath there. So I can see this is going to touch the side, a little bit down. So it comes here, it comes almost up to the top, and it reaches about the middle. So somewhere in there is where my stem bends over. And then I can also see that as it comes down, it sweeps across about almost crossing the middle of the square. And then I can see that this part comes in and back. And then it looks like the banana touches almost right at where that line meets the side. And it almost goes over to here, so it's close. Okay, so I've got a basic shape. I can go back and change and adjust that later, but right now I've got a basic shape. Now I can see that I need my apple right next to it. The key here is it's not a perfect circle, and I can go and adjust that later. But right now, I just want to get it in the frame so that I know. I can see there's a little corner right here of space. So I do want to leave that little corner of space in mine. And it touches the apple. So it touches the banana, slightly overlapping it. So it's really important that I do that on mine as well, so that I have that slight overlap. Okay, so approximately that's where it is. Not perfectly, but approximately. Alright, now we have an apple down in the bottom left quadrant. And we can come, we see that it goes off the paper ever so slightly. It does leave some of that corner. And it looks like this part's a little bit further out towards the banana. And then it comes and curves back down a little bit more steeply. And then it comes and curves around. Okay, so that gets us where that is. Let's go back up to the top right. So my lemon looks like it's crossing a little bit further down, maybe about 1/4 of the way down. It looks like the fat part goes about that far from the top. and then it goes about to the middle. And I can see that that will give me a nice basis to start from. And remember, I'm not getting all the shapes exactly perfect right this second. What I'm doing is getting them in. Alright, and I realize this goes slightly over, but not as far back as I had made it. And it's slightly less curved than it was at the top. And then it rounds as it gets into the big part of the lemon. Okay, and then this seems to have almost a smooth connection. Not like it's not like a marshmallow stuck on. Okay, I feel comfortable with that being like a close shape. Now the nectarine, I can see it's almost a perfect semicircle, and it comes really close to the lemon. It seems to start a little bit above the lemon, and it comes around and stops above. So that's my approximation. And then down here, I can see that a little bit above a fourth, my pear barely touches that line. It's barely crossing over. And it comes up almost at the middle of the page, makes its curve, and then comes down. It feels like there's a slight bump right here that I need to pay attention to, which tells me that the rest of my shape is a little off. Because right now, I'm seeing more of the side of the pear than I should. So what that shows me is that this needs to be a little less sharp. And you'll notice before I made the change, I went ahead and tried the other way, because that way I can see where my mistake was and I can actually avoid drawing the exact same line. And that makes a big difference when you're correcting things. Okay. Ish. I think it's a little bit higher than the apple when I really look at it. A pear is a hard thing. It can be pretty challenging. Okay, that feels better. And it looks more accurate. Alright, last but not least, we've got the second banana. So, if my line goes across right here, I come a little bit below, because it comes a little bit below. It stops a little distance from the side. And I can see that it's curving and creating almost a nice triangle right there on the side. And then I can come down, and it almost curves exactly with that pear. Their curve is almost parallel. So that's helpful. Okay, so now that I've got the basic stuff in, let's look and see how you go in and create your smaller details. So for example, we've got this delightful little stem on our apple. And the question is, how do we handle that? What do we do about it? So here's my apple. I've zoomed in so you guys can see a little bit closer. I can kind of tell that this is about halfway up the apple. The stem is a little below that. It's off center. So instead of just going, oh, got a stem, instead of doing that, I'm going to pay close attention to what's actually there. It's a big part of what still life is about, is paying real close attention to what you actually see. So there's about the middle, and then I can say underneath it's got this kind of curve where the blackness of the shadow around the stem starts. And then the stem comes out. Now when I look, that might be a little big, and it feels like it doesn't get as thin as it should up here. It almost looks like if you've ever seen a churro extruded. Kind of what it reminds me of. Okay, that feels much more accurate. Now I am going to help myself out by just going and kind of creating light lines for where the more yellow spots are happening. That way I kind of have a guide to work on later when I start adding my color. Okay, so we've got that. Let's zoom in a little bit here so that you can see better. Alright, now let's find another one of our shapes that we need to get to. Whoop. Computers are magical, but they can do a lot of stuff that you don't want them to do when they do it. Alright, let's come look at the pear. So, here's our pear. Right here. Now, when I look at its stem seems further over than the curve at the top. I think that curve should be a little bit more leaning. And it appears pretty thick. So I'm going to come down below the half to about where I see that stem. And I'm going to come up, up, and then it seems to have a circle at the top, so it's almost cylindrical in the way that it's working. Okay, and then part of what makes that really a possibility to see is looking and seeing where that brown happens, because it also kind of gives us that mental picture of, oh yes, this is an indentation. So that's kind of where some of the brown is. Let's see about these bruises or scars. So this one's going not quite diagonal, not quite straight up. So it's about right here. Almost looks like a silhouette of a rabbit. I don't know if you guys have ever read Madeline, but when she's in the hospital, there's a crack in the ceiling that has the habit of looking like a rabbit. Alright. Might be a little bit too big, might need to shift it down some this way, but it gives me a good idea of where it is. Then we've got this one down here that looks kind of like wings. A little one that's about even with the stem. And then we've got one back here that's kind of going down. Alright, so if you were working on this on your own, one of the things that you would do is you would go around correcting all your shapes and making sure that you can see what you've got going on. And then you would Sharpie. Sharpie's great because it lets you then have a nice defined line, but you're not stuck with any kind of sketchy lines you made with pencil. It's absolutely a choice. It's not something you have to do. It is something I like to do just as I work. So I'm going to come. I'm not pressing down on my Sharpie because I don't want it to get damaged as I work. I want it to stay nice and pointy for as long as it can. So I've got that part. I'll come and get the apple. And then these parts are really the difference is color, so I'm going to let the color be there. And I'll get the pear. And keep in mind, if I was working on my own, not making a how-to for y'all, I would keep going. I would keep working on getting each one the way it needed to be before I move forward with my Sharpie or with my color. Because you may adjust one thing and go, oh, well, now that I see how this is supposed to be, I need to adjust this. So it's really much more helpful if you'll get that all together. Alright, so once you've Sharpied, you're going to erase anything that's not a line you still need. So, for example, my outline, I don't really need any more. And I don't really need this right here either. Now, some people like to go in and kind of accentuate, where they're going to come and do their color differences with a Sharpie. That's totally your choice. It really just depends on how you like it to look. Alright, I'm going to do a separate video about blending on these. So I will see you guys later when you've gotten yours drawn. Bye.